Boom! The Undoing Project by Michael Lewis. Now, before I get into this book review, I want to say we are having some construction done in the house, so you might hear some clanking, banging, doors opening, closing, that kind of thing. Apologizing up front. The Undoing Project. Overall thoughts. I'll say my overall thoughts. Then I'll give you my 15 takeaways from this book, right? Overall, I enjoyed the relationship between Danny and Amos. And I actually enjoyed it because it allowed me to learn a lot about myself in reading about their relationship, their friendship, right? But it felt like it was an intellectual relationship. Even in the book, they describe them as intellectual lovers that even their wife was able to recognize. And it really taught me that in relationships, often we seek to have our partner be our everything, to be our intellectual stimulation, our physical, passionate stimulation, and then also to be able to care for us. And it's really impossible to find all three things in one person. And it's even more impossible or more remote to find all three things in one person at the same time, for them to be equally passionate, intellectually stimulating, and caring. Usually you'll get bouts of that. But Danny and Amos, these are two Israeli psychologists who blended economics, and they really were challenging, they really did a lot of research on how people made decisions and why people made the decisions that they made. And so a lot of their research really contradicted at the time what was out there. And that's what made Danny and Amos so great, is they were like, people were like, whoa, we thought it was this, but really it's that. And so that's why I'm excited to share with you all the 15 biggest takeaways from their book. And the first one is, seek people who can recognize their fallibility, who can recognize their errors, their mistakes. And that's on page 29. And they're talking about recruiting NBA players or NBA commissioners, talking about recruiting a scout, right? And when he's looking for a scout, he's really looking for people who recognize the mistakes that they've made. And I do the same thing in relationships. Me and my girl have been together for 5 years. And very early on, I asked her, I said, hey, tell me about why you think your last relationship ended. And what I was really listening for was some accountability, some taking a responsibility or ownership of why the relationship didn't work out. No matter what the relationship is, both parties are responsible. And to me, that's a very key quality in having a partner. And she definitely gave me that. So, shout out to my girlfriend. And that's why we're together still for 5 years, because she's a person who can take responsibility, recognizes her fallibility, the mistakes that she's made, and is able to own up to it. If you meet somebody or you're hiring somebody or dating somebody, they're like, I didn't do anything, and it's like, you gotta go. Nope. You don't see your part in it? Peace. In the Navy SEALs, they talk about, take 100% ownership for your 10%. I love that, right? It's not saying it's all your fault or mostly your fault, but it's just recognizing how, even if, whatever. But so, boom, that's number one. Number two, a person's understanding of what they see changes with context in which they see it. That's powerful. A person's understanding of what they see changes in the context of when they see it or where they see it. For instance, in America, I'm Black. In Gibraltar, I'm American. In Belize, I'm from the States. In Alaska, I'm from the lower 48. So depending on where I am, that's how people generally see me, right? In a classroom, I'm the teacher, right? Like the labels, how people see you. You know, if I had a badge on with a gun and got a police car, I'm a person of authority. Like it all changes based on the context, right? And I think this is why like a lot of celebrities struggle. It's like out there in public, they're a star, and at home, you're dad. You know what I mean? Like, so context. So if you're a person, if you're struggling with how you're being seen or how you see yourself, you might have to change your environment, right? And I know that's easier said than done, but environment cues us to how we're seen. Number 3, on page 94, he was driven more by the fear of being thought of. He was driven more by the fear of being thought of as unmanly than being brave. Page 94. I thought that was dope. There's a character in there, I forget who it is, but basically he came off as very courageous and brave, but really he was doing it because he had a fear of being seen as unmanly. So he was doing all these courageous and brave things, you know, saving people from drowning, running into a burning building, but it was fear, not courage, that was driving him. And so I think a lot of times when we see someone doing something, we make an assumption about who they are, but we really have to get to the why of what they're doing. They say actions speak louder than words, but to me, your why speaks louder than your actions, right? Number 4, praise and criticism has us regressing to the mean. Saying nothing at all could do more damage than either. And that's on page 126, right? So this is talking about praise and criticism. A lot of times we think that praising someone will give them a boost and criticizing someone will, knock them down or suppress them. And the truth is, praising someone may give them a temporary boost, and criticizing someone may give them a temporary knockdown. But overall, their behaviors are going to regress to the mean. Meaning, say I go to the gym 2 days a week, right? And then I get a trainer. My trainer's like, "You could do it. You can go to the gym every day." And so for the next 3 days, I'm going to the gym every day, right? Because he gave me praise. He's like, "You're great. You're amazing." But over time, I'm going to fall back to the 2 days a week. I'm going to regress to the mean. And same thing with criticism. Criticism might knock me down for a day or two, but eventually I'm going to get right back to where I was, to my baseline. So we all have a baseline, right? And so does that mean we shouldn't say anything? Not quite. Because saying nothing could denote indifference, like you don't care. And that could be damaging. That could really erode trust and connection over time. So it's not about should we not praise or should we not criticize. It's really like, how do we give feedback in a way that's specific and that targets behavior? So instead of saying you're great or you were crap, it's like, hey, it really seemed to be efficient when you come in 15 minutes earlier, or when you do abs before chest, right? Those are very specific. That's very specific feedback. Or it's better if you start your story off with action versus starting your story off with data, right? Or your speech off with data. Start off with a story versus starting off with a question, right? That's specific feedback. So I'm not praising or criticizing you. I'm giving you tools to improve what you're doing. And I'm recognizing, and I could even say, hey, overall, I enjoyed the speech. Here are some ways that we can improve it, and go into those specific details. So it's not praise, it's not criticism, it's just constructive feedback. I'm in Toastmasters and they're very good at that. So I love that, right? So don't say nothing, say something, but keep it constructive, keep it specific, and keep it focused on the behavior instead of being like, you're amazing, you're beautiful, you're awesome. Like no one can live up to that, right? What else? All right, number 5. Instead of selling people on change, identify reasons for resistance and address those. I like that because I think a lot of times we try to sell somebody on something, like, especially like if you're a kid, you're like, hey, we should go on this trip. And you're like, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that, we could do this. And so sometimes that works, selling people on the benefits, right, of what you're trying to sell them on, whether it's a car or an experience or what have you. But if that's not working, then you want to identify their areas of resistance. Like, why are they saying no? Is it financial? Is it time? Is it something else? And then address those issues. Instead of ignoring their issues and not asking them what their resistance is or what the obstacle or what the friction points are. And you're just like, but it has this, but we can do that. Like, you're not even taking into account what their needs and wants and thoughts and feelings are. So if you're getting resistance over here, over selling them on the benefits, then you want to listen to what is it that is holding them back, right? And then address those, show them how what you're talking about can help or assist or reduce or increase or whatever their pain points are. Number 6, the world isn't a stage, it's a casino. I love that, right? Because I do stand up, I'm in acting, and I've always been taught that the world is a stage and everyone's merely players. Yes, it is that, right? But the world is also a casino, meaning it's all chance. We're all here by luck. Like, just the fact that you're here now in 2020, like right now it's 2024. This is luck. I could have been born in 1804 or 1504, or I could have been born at any time. I could have been born white. I could have been born short. I could, we think about all the ways in which we've taken control over our lives and exerted willpower and made choices, but just the fact that I'm able to articulate and read books like that was choice, that was chance, right? The fact that I could read, or people who don't have eyes, who are born without eyes, they can't read. I mean, maybe they could read with their fingers, but chance, right? And so what's beautiful is if you accept that life is a casino and it's really about chance, right? Now, of course, you can do things to improve your luck, right? Working hard, all those different things. And we know that if life is a casino and the house always wins, then what's the house? Now, for me, I feel like the house are 3 things, right? 1 is time. Time always wins. No matter what I do, I'm going to die. Like, things are going to grow old. I'm going to get, like, time is undefeated, right? It is a trillion and right now. Entropy, also the fact that things turn into chaos over time. That's undefeated. And then also institutions like banks, even in during the Depression, and no matter, whoever gets elected, banks are the house, and they end up 9 times out of 10 on top, undefeated, right? So you look at these institutions, you look at time, look at entropy, those things are the house, undefeated, So I like that. Life is a casino, but that doesn't mean that we don't do our best, right? With the luck that we've been given. Number 7, what people remember about the past warps their judgment of the future. The defect is in our imagination, right? So a lot of times it's hard for us, if you think about relationships, like, why do I keep going back to the same person over and over again? Part of that is like, we can't imagine being with a different kind of person, having a different kind of relationship. People who don't want to leave their jobs, they just can't imagine that they could do anything other than what they've been doing, right? Because of what's ever happened in our past. Even in working out and it's like, I've only been able to do 2 push-ups, or I've never been able to learn a language. It's so hard for us to imagine what is possible, because we just remember what has happened. And so I think the key is to reframe our history so that we can feel propelled into the future. I'll give you an example, right? So if you go, I've always been in this kind of relationship. I seem to always be with a certain person, same dynamic. I would challenge that and be like, was every relationship you've had like this? Or certain relationships? Because I'm sure if you looked at the relationships with romantic partners, and then relationships with friends, relationships with your parents, relationships with, the cashier, the mail person. Like we have so many relationships in our lives. And if we look at all those different relationships, we may then realize that, oh, wait, all my relationships haven't been unhealthy or resulted in a restraining order, right? So to look back and really question and challenge our thinking about what our history was, so that then we can be propelled to the future. Because then once you find that one nugget that disproves that all of my history has been a certain way, then we go, okay, I have done this. And so I can do this moving forward. I've been there. I've experienced this, and it was great. I can do it again. They talk about like millionaires. They say like if a millionaire loses his money, it's easier for him to regain that $1 million because he knows what it feels like. He knows what it takes. He remembers. That muscle memory is not just in gym, but it's also in business, right? And so if we can reframe our history to be like, oh, I've done hard things before and I've gotten the outcome, the desired outcome, then you go, oh, okay, well, if I've done it in this arena, then for sure I can do it in this other area, right? So reframing our history so that it propels us forward. It's all about changing the story, right? Number 8, people endured pain as long as it ended on a pleasant note. I love this. They talk about the reason why like people keep going back to the dentist every 6 months. I know some of y'all ain't been to the dentist in a while. That's okay. But when you go to the dentist, you'll notice that it starts off with the scrape. But at the very end, they come in with that smooth buffer, right? They're like, well, what toothpaste do you want? You want strawberry? You want mint, right? And you want grape? And then it's so smooth and so clean, little buffer. And then you walk out there like, bing, right? It's beautiful. So we'll sit through anything as long as we know that there's a pleasant ending. And I think a lot of times we struggle with sleep or going into our next day because we dread our day, or we dread our Mondays because we're just thinking about all the things we don't want to do. And we haven't thought about the thing that we're looking forward to. So, if you get the Monday blues, right? The Monday moves, I forget what they call them, right? Then don't just think about the things that you're dreading about your Monday. Ask yourself, like, what is the one thing I'm looking forward to? What's the treat? What's the delight? What's the surprise? What's the pleasantness that'll be there? And can I create that? And if you can't think of one, keep your eyes open and say, you know what? I'm willing to let my Monday surprise me with something pleasant. And I promise you, if you keep your eyes open, it will, right? Number 10, no one has ever made a decision based on a number. They make them based on a story. I love this, right? When you look at commercials, they're not selling you on the benefits of the car. They're selling you on a story of what you can do with the car. If it's a Subaru, you can take it into the outback. If it's a Porsche, you can drive real smooth down the highway with a beautiful girl and, step out in a tuxedo. It's like anything that people are trying to sell you, the iPhone, they're trying to sell you on a story. Even reading books is like the story of what reading a book means. And and how to impact your life. Like readers are leaders. Like that's a story. So we don't buy based off of metrics and numbers. We're buying based off a story. Like, like I have a watch. This watch is like $10. But there are people who walk around with like $1 million watch. Are they really buying the watch? No, they're buying the story behind the watch. The fact that it was handmade. There's only 5 of them. It took them 2 years to make this one watch. It's Swiss made. It has all these different mechanisms. It just whatever the story is, right? So remember, it's instead of trying to sell people, I think, especially in relationships, we get so focused on trying to influence our partner on something through the logic of things that we forget that we have to also create a story behind it to actually persuade and move them. You see it in politics. Politicians really do a great job, or politicians do a great job, or an intentional job, I should say, of honing their story, whatever that is, right? That's what you're buying. That's what we elect, the story. Best story wins. Number 11, people's desire to avoid loss exceeded their desire to secure gain. And that's on page 269. And that explains sometimes why people stay in horrible or abusive relationships, right? It's like that fear of like losing the house over your head, the routine, the normalcy, that's stronger than the desire to secure a gain. It's also why like a lot of people don't put their money in the stock market. I mean, some people do, but they're just like, I don't trust it. It's too weird. It's ethereal. So you see the same thing with crypto, where like they just rather keep what they have instead of trying to like make more money. I mean, it's part of why I don't play the lottery. Like I'm not doing that. Like that's crazy to me. I'm not a dot like what? But I tell you what, if I had little to no money, I might play. Now, even then, because I struggled before, really, and still did not play the lottery. But my mom plays the lottery all the time. Which brings us into number 13. I'm going to skip 12 and come back to that. But in 13, we gamble on long shots, not short shots, which makes sense because I would definitely run for president of the United States, but I would not run for president of my homeowners association. You know what I mean? Like that's a short shot. I have a chance. It'll probably be me and like 4 other people. But the president of the United States, I'd run for that. Like that just sounds fun. Why not? Like it's so ridiculous. Like if I lose, not a big deal. If I win, it's like all upside. But if I lose homeowners association, I'd be miffed because I know a lot of my neighbors and I'd be like, why didn't you vote for me? We can't be friends. I'd be like, who was it? Who was especially if I lost by 1. No. Number 12, gratitude is the antidote to inequality. I love that. Now, they didn't say that in the book, but that's my interpretation of, on page 275 in the book, they talk about the study done with monkeys. And they were given both monkeys, these 2 monkeys were in a cage, and they were giving both monkeys cucumbers, right? And then one day they started giving one monkey bananas. And then this monkey, the other monkey, was upset because it wasn't getting bananas. It was getting cucumbers. And so they tried to extrapolate it to be like, this is what makes people upset and angry, is like my neighbor all of a sudden has 3 cars and, pulling up in a new boat or whatever, has a boat, while I got like a 10-year-old Prius, right? It's like, why does he get bananas and I'm still eating cucumbers, right? He's not working any harder. We got the same job, that kind of thing, whatever. And the ability, though, that humans have is to be grateful for what we have. That study, it made it sound like, oh, well, if this one monkey gets bananas and this other one gets cucumbers, then people are going to react like the monkey was getting cucumbers and just being upset and irate. But in reality, yes, some people would, but there are other people who are just like, you know what? I'm just grateful I have cucumbers. I'm grateful I'm not starving. I'm grateful I'm being fed anything. I'm grateful that my buddy is getting cucumbers and or getting bananas and they're happy. Like, we have that ability to be grateful, right? And we also have the ability to be happy for other people and be excited and share in their bliss and their winnings. It's almost like your friend who gets a promotion and double pay, or your colleague, right? They get the promotion, up pay. Like, we have that ability to high five them and congratulate and celebrate with them. Like, that's the beautiful part of being human, is like, we recognize that not everybody's gonna get everything at the same time or even their fair shake, but we do have the ability to demonstrate gratitude for what we have, be grateful that the other person even received what they have, because that shows that the world is random, and that means that just as randomly as they receive bananas, I could randomly receive bananas or something better. What if I got a bowl of fruit, kiwis, bananas, mangoes, and I'd be like, yeah, you see what I'm saying? So we always got to be happy, and not always, but there's room for gratitude is what I'm saying, to level out the impacts of inequality. Number 14, that's right, we got two more. Some people were built to fight and others to survive. Man, I've seen this. I think, we just celebrated Veterans Day, and there's definitely a lot of vets who are built for war. They're built to fight, and they're not built for the everyday life. They're not built to pick out, to decide between 12 boxes of cereal, or to do laundry, or, to run errands. Like, they're built for war. And even in relationships, I dated women who are built for war. Like, they'll drum up chaos just because they need it. It's just what they silence is violence to them, and then there are people who are built to survive. And I feel like I'm more built for survival than fighting. I don't want to fight. I want peace. I want to bridge the gap. I like to stir up some trouble here and there, but I'm not trying to fight. I don't think we need to fight. We're just having fun, right? And so to recognize, and then some people I think a lot of people have a blend of two, where I think we all have fight in us. Some of us are willing to fight for ourselves, and some of us are willing to fight for other people. Some of us are willing to fight for an ideal, right? So like Nelson Mandela was fighting for an ideal, right? He was fighting for the people and against institutions. And there are some people who are built to fight, other people. You got boxers, MMA fighters, military service people, people in relationships, and then there are people who are just at war with themselves, So we're all fighting on some level. We're all at war on some level. We all have our own battles, whether it's external or internal. Sometimes they're both, It just depends on the context in which we're in. Number 15 on page 351, he says, happiness, I love this one. Happiness is different than what we anticipate, what we experience, and what we remember. I think that's beautiful, because I gave you an example, like you got a trip coming up, right? So you anticipate this is going to happen. We're going to do this. They're going to say that. We're going to eat this. Like all these things that you think are going to bring you joy. But then the experience of it is like, we didn't do this. We didn't do that. We ended up doing this. Instead, we did that. It got rained out, blah, blah, blah. So the experience was something different. But then how you remember it might be like, it was the best trip of my life, like for whatever reason. Or it was the worst trip. It was a horrendous catastrophe. So how we anticipate our happiness, how we experience it, and how we remember it are typically three different things. And so that's the beauty of journaling, of taking notes, so that you can look back and see how your mood and your thoughts and feelings about an experience change from anticipating it to experiencing it and to remembering it. And then also, over time, where a month from now, 3 months from now, I think this is also why people get back into abusive or toxic relationships, because over time, you forget all the negatives and you just remember all the positives. And that's what our brain tends to do, is it remembers the peaks and the valleys, right? But it forgets the little nuances, the little things in the middle. And those are the key things. Those are the key things that, because that's the mean, that's the average, the little things in the middle. The highs and the lows, those are rare blips, right? But what's happening in the middle, that's the chunk of the relationship. And so to remind yourself of that and your work and what you're doing. I appreciate you guys spending a chunk of this relationship, your time with me. That is Michael Lewis, The Undoing Project. I enjoyed it. And I know this was a long review, but really I don't believe in reviews. I think it's more valuable to discuss what you learned, what you took away from it, and then to share that. So, but I do recommend this book. It was a easy read, and that's it. Stay tuned for more book reviews or whatever I post up here. I'm Leo Flowers. Hit the like button, subscribe, do all the things. Peace.